169 British commandos will be gone by sunrise, and what they're about to do will enrage Adolf Hitler so badly he'll order every commando in the world eliminated on sight, even if they surrender. But at 0134 hours on March 28, 1942, none of them know this yet, as their destroyer packed with explosives slams into Saint Nazaire at 19 knots. The darkness of the Loire estuary shatters at precisely 0134 hours on March 28, 1942, as the modified destroyer HMS Campbelltown slams into the massive caisson of the Normandy dry dock at Saint Nazaire. Traveling at 19 knots, the vessel lurches 9 meters forward, its forecastle coming to rest dead center over the entrance gates. Below the deck, 4.5 tons of high explosives sit with their pencil fuses already activated, silently counting down, enough to level an entire city block. Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beatty stands on the bridge, despite having already lost 2 helmsmen to withering German fire. He turns to the survivors and remarks, "Well, here we are, 4 minutes late." But what Beatty and his men don't know is that the real nightmare is just beginning, and the carnage on this dock will spark a chain of events that transforms warfare itself. To understand why 611 men are about to throw themselves into this meat grinder, we need to rewind the clock to June 1940, when the British Army limped back from Dunkirk, having abandoned nearly every heavy weapon it possessed. 700 tanks, 64,000 vehicles, mountains of ammunition, all left behind on French beaches. Prime Minister Winston Churchill watches his army return home defeated, and on June 6th, he issues a directive demanding the formation of specially trained troops of the Hunter class to develop a reign of terror along the occupied coastline. He envisions men who will strike from the darkness, eliminate efficiently, and vanish before the enemy can respond. Lieutenant Colonel Dudley Clark receives the directive to turn Churchill's vision into reality. He borrowed the term commando from the Boer guerrillas who had tormented British forces in South Africa. "These won't be regular soldiers. They'll be volunteers, hand-picked from existing units, men willing to endure training so brutal that approximately 40 will perish during exercises alone. But turning fighters into legends requires a forge that will break men's bodies and rebuild their souls." It's a freezing morning in the Scottish Highlands, January 1942. A train pulls into the station at Speen Bridge, and 50 volunteers step onto the platform, exhausted and looking forward to warm barracks. What they get instead is Lieutenant Colonel Charles Vaughan, a granite-faced veteran of World War I, standing in the snow with a stopwatch. 13 kilometers to Achnacarry Castle, he barks. Full kit, 90 minutes. Anyone who fails goes back on the next train. They hoist their Bergen rucksacks, check their rifles, and start running. Among the volunteers is a quiet explosives expert from Yorkshire named Arthur Young. He's 22 years old, slight of build, with the careful hands of a man who works with wiring and timing devices. Young watches 3 men collapse in the first 5 kilometers, dragged to the roadside and tagged for RTU, return to unit. Young's lungs are on fire, his shoulders screaming under 40 pounds of equipment, but he keeps moving. He finishes in 87 minutes. Vaughan doesn't congratulate him. He just nods and points toward the castle. "Drop your kit. Parade ground in 5 minutes." The Commando Basic Training Center at Achnacarry Castle becomes the most strenuous battle school in the Allied forces. The curriculum emphasizes an aggressiveness of spirit, a willingness to close with the enemy and finish him with hands, blade, or rifle butt. On his 3rd day, Young crawls under machine weapon fire, with real bullets cracking inches above his helmet. The tracers leave glowing streaks in his vision. If Young lifts his head, he perishes. If he freezes, he's RTU. He claws forward through mud and snow, tasting dirt and fear. But the physical hardship is nothing compared to what they learn next. Instructors William Ewart Fairbairn and Eric Anthony Sykes, veterans of the Shanghai Municipal Police, introduce a system they call gutter fighting. There are no rules except eliminate or be eliminated. Fairbairn demonstrates on a dummy approaching from behind. His left hand clamps over the mouth. His right hand drives a blade into the neck at a 45-degree angle, severing the carotid artery. Unconsciousness in 5 seconds, he says. Loss in 12. The target doesn't scream. He simply falls. The recruits practice until the motion becomes muscle memory, until they can execute the technique in total darkness by feeling alone. Young's hands shake the first 50 times. By the 100th repetition, they're steady. The Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife features a slender, double-edged blade optimized for thrusting. The blade can penetrate a rib cage even through thick winter clothing. Young receives his FS knife in a simple ceremony. Vaughan hands it to him without fanfare. This blade has one purpose: use it. The commandos also adopt the Bergen rucksack and toggle ropes that can be joined to create rope ladders for scaling cliffs. Every piece of gear has a purpose. Every ounce counts. By late 1941, Churchill's Hunter class was ready to prove itself. The first major test comes on December 27, 1941, in the Norwegian fjord of Vagsø. The morning is clear and brutally cold. The British flotilla makes a perfect landfall. The German garrison initially dismisses reports of approaching warships as drunken Christmas celebrations. That mistake will cost them everything. Kenya's 6-inch weapons begin screaming into the barracks on Malloy Island, firing nearly 500 shells in under 10 minutes. Each shell weighs 100 pounds and travels faster than sound. The smell of burning wood and flesh drifts on the Arctic wind. The raiding force, led by Colonel John Durnford Slater, divides into 5 distinct groups. Standing in the bow of his Higgins boat, Major Mad Jack Churchill plays his group ashore with bagpipes, leading his men onto Malloy Island with a drawn claymore sword. Churchill's group overruns the 4 weapons with such rapid intensity that there's no organized resistance. They capture the German commander and 15 men. The commandos blew up the coastal defense weapons and set fire to the Mortensen herring oil factory, creating towers of oily black smoke visible for kilometers. But if you want to know where to subscribe to this channel to see more epic military history content, hit that button now, because what happens next is where the legend of the commandos truly begins, and it involves a level of brutality that will change the rules of warfare forever. However, the perspective of the main unit in South Vagsø is far grimmer. Arthur Young is in one of the landing craft when an RAF phosphorus smoke bomb from a Hampton bomber hit by flak falls directly onto the landing craft ahead of him. White phosphorus is a substance from hell itself. It burns at over 800 degrees Celsius and cannot be extinguished by water. Young watches men he trained with at Aknakari transform into human torches, their screams cutting through the fire. Half of a commando troop is either lost instantly or suffers burns so severe their screams echo across the water. Young's boat veers to avoid the burning wreckage. He pulls 3 men from the freezing water, their skin hanging in strips, before his boat hits the shore. The survivors surge into the town. The German resistance is fanatical. 50 crack German troops from a mountain unit are in the town on Christmas leave, and they engage the raiders in vicious house-to-house fighting. Clearing the wooden buildings means fighting structure to structure for the entire 3/4-mile length of the village. The air fills with the staccato crack of rifle fire, the boom of grenades, and the screams of wounded men in 3 languages. Captain Algie Forrester falls at the hotel door when a German bullet hits him as he holds a cocked grenade. The grenade detonates as he falls, tearing his body apart. Norwegian Captain Martin Linge, a famed actor turned intelligence officer, also falls leading a charge. The raiders fire mortar shells straight down the hotel chimney to set the building ablaze. When the Germans ran from the burning structure, the commandos cut them down, silhouetted against the flames. When a German sailor tries to surrender after throwing a grenade at Durnford Slater, Sergeant Mills responds with "Ya, ya," and sends him point blank. Young plants charge on a fuel depot. His hands don't shake anymore. But what the commandos don't realize is that while they're focused on the flaming buildings, German Gebirgsjäger mountain rangers have moved into the cliffs behind the town. These elite reinforcements begin pouring fire down on the evacuation beaches. Durnford Slater's force is now caught between the burning town and the cliffs. The combat becomes a sensory nightmare of oily smoke, fluttering sardine can labels, and automatic weapons echoing off snow-covered hills. The commandos grenade their way from building to building, aided by Norwegian civilians who carry sacks of grenades through the flaming streets. By the time the raid concludes, the commandos have destroyed 4 oil factories, the lighthouse, and the barracks. Young's demolition charges have obliterated 3 major targets, but the psychological blow on Adolf Hitler is far greater. When Hitler receives news of the Vagsø raid, witnesses report he slams his fist on the table so hard the maps jump. Enraged, Hitler becomes convinced Norway is the zone of destiny and orders his navy to move its major fleet units, including the battleship Tirpitz, to Norwegian fjords. This reallocation eventually reaches 400,000 men, severely weakening the German front in Russia. But these raids are just a warm-up. Churchill is about to order a mission so dangerous that even the commandos think it's impossible. By early 1942, the Tirpitz threaten to strangle the Atlantic shipping lanes. The Tirpitz is a monster, heavier than the Titanic, longer than 2 football fields, with weapons that can punch through a meter of steel from 15 kilometers away. In one Arctic engagement, the Tirpitz obliterates a convoy of 35 merchant ships in under 6 hours. Churchill keeps a photograph of the Tirpitz on his desk. Crossing out every day it remains afloat. The Normandy dry dock at Saint-Nazaire is the only facility on Europe's western coast capable of accommodating such a vessel for repairs. Without access to this dock, the Germans cannot risk the Tirpitz in open combat. If the British can destroy that dock, they can cage the Tirpitz permanently. Operation Chariot is approved with an execution date just 3 weeks after its initial proposal. 24 hours before launch, the plan nearly collapses when weather forecasts predict heavy fog. Commander Robert Ryder insists they proceed anyway. The plan is audacious to the point of insanity. HMS Campbelltown will be loaded with explosives and rammed into the dock gates at full speed. Commandos will then destroy the pumping stations that control the dock's operation. Motor launches will land additional troops to target German defenses. Arthur Young volunteers for the demolition team tasked with destroying the southern pump house. He knows the statistics, 40% casualties. He volunteers anyway. The German defenses are formidable. 6,000 troops, submarine pens with concrete, roofs 3.5 meters thick, and extensive anti-aircraft batteries. As the Campbelltown and her motor launches commence their 6-kilometer run, the British employ a desperate ruse, flying Nazi flags and responding to German challenges with secret codes acquired in Norway. The deception creates brief confusion, but the ruse is exposed as German spotters illuminate searchlights and open fire. Beatty orders the German flag lowered and replaced with the white British battle standard. The mahogany motor launches are subjected to horrific fire. German cannons tear through the wooden hulls like paper. Fuel ignites. Men burn alive. Young's motor launch takes 3 direct hits. The man next to him, a Londoner named Davies, is cut in half by a cannon shell. Young grabs Davies' ammunition pouches and keeps moving. The remaining boats push on through a gauntlet of tracer fire, crisscrossing the water. When the Campbelltown strikes the caisson at 01:34 hours, the impact throws men to the deck. The ship's bow crumples as designed, wedging firmly into the gate structure. Commandos pour off the destroyer, racing onto the dock. They're outnumbered, under-equipped, and their only hope for extraction lies in small wooden boats being picked apart by German artillery. Behind them, the destroyer sits like a ticking time bomb. Newman's men charge the rooftop weapon positions. The fighting is savage. Commandos kick in doors, toss grenades, and follow them in with submachine weapons blazing. Young reaches the southern pump house and sets his charges with mechanical precision. 5 kilograms of plastic explosive on each of 4 main casings. He wires them in series, sets the timer for 8 minutes, and arms the fuse. Commandos find themselves in prolonged firefights, running low on ammunition. The smell of cordite, burning oil, and blood fills the air. The dock is lit by flames, casting grotesque shadows of men fighting and falling. But the nightmare is far from over. As dawn approaches, Newman makes the agonizing decision to order his men to break into small groups and attempt to escape overland. Young and 3 others make it 2 kilometers inland before a German patrol cuts them off. They fight for 20 minutes before their ammunition runs out. Young destroys his FS knife by snapping the blade between rocks. The Campbelltown has not yet detonated. German officers board the ship to inspect the wreckage, unaware they're standing on top of a bomb. At noon on March 28th, more than 10 hours after the raid, Campbelltown exploded. The detonation is catastrophic. The blast wave shatters windows and is heard kilometers away. The entire bow section disintegrates, along with a significant portion of the dock gate. Over 360 German officers and men are eliminated instantly, vaporized or crushed by falling concrete. The Normandy dry dock is rendered inoperable. The mission is a success, but the cost is staggering. Arthur, young, in a German detention cell, when the explosion rocks the building, allows himself a grim smile. His charges work too. If you're wondering what happened to Hitler after these raids pushed him to the breaking point, drop a comment below with your guess, because his response will create one of the most infamous and brutal orders of the entire Second World War. Hitler's rage is about to do what no German bullet could: turn the commandos into marked men with a price on every head. German naval intelligence delivers the damage report. The Normandy dock is gone. The Tirpitz is caged. The Fury reaches a breaking point following the Dieppe and Sark raids in late 1942. During Dieppe, German intelligence discovers Allied orders instructing raiders to bind prisoners. Combined with allegations that bound prisoners were found eliminated on the beaches, this sends Hitler into megalomaniacal rage. Shortly after, during Operation Basalt on Sark, commandos tie the hands of 5 German prisoners, 4 of whom are eliminated while attempting to escape. The Germans issue a communiqué claiming Allied troops act like bandits. On October 18, 1942, Hitler issued the infamous Kommandobefehl, the Commando Order. This top-secret decree, distributed in only 12 copies, orders that all Allied commandos, even in proper uniforms or attempting to surrender, are to be eliminated to the last man or ruthlessly mowed down. Any who fall into German hands by other means are to be handed over to the SD for execution. Hitler personally holds all commanders responsible under military law. The implementation begins a cycle of atrocities. The first victims are 2 officers and 5 other ranks from Operation Musketoon, taken to Sachsenhausen and eliminated. In Bergen, Norway, the 7-man crew of MTB 345 are executed despite being lawful combatants. The sailors are lined up and eliminated by machine weapon. Their bodies are buried in unmarked graves. Arthur Young, held in Stalag 8B, learns of the Commando Order through the camp grapevine. The Germans' post notices warning commandos will receive special treatment. Young knows what that means. Every day he expects the SS to call his name. And yet, the volunteers do not decrease. Recruitment actually increases. The British commandos, upon learning the Germans have declared them outlaws, respond with grim determination. They intensify training, refine tactics, and continue launching raids with even greater audacity. The unit prepares for the invasion of Normandy, knowing that for them, the standard rules of warfare have been permanently abolished. This is total war, stripped of any pretense of chivalry. The cost is staggering. Of the 611 men at Saint-Nazaire, 169 are lost, and 215 become prisoners of war. Many prisoners are executed under the Commando Order in the months that follow. Casualty statistics for Commando units are approximately 40%, exceeding regular infantry rates and rivaling air crews. Despite these losses, the Raiders garnered 8 Victoria Crosses, more than any other operation of its size. 6 of the 8 are posthumous. Arthur Young survives the war. He returns to Yorkshire in 1945, 70 pounds lighter, carrying scars and memories he'll never speak about. He keeps his shattered knife blade in a box under his bed. He passed away in 1983, age 63, having never told his grandchildren what he did. The strategic impact is exactly what Churchill hoped for. The Tirpitz never leaves Norwegian waters for offensive operations. Without the Saint-Nazaire dock, the German Navy cannot risk the battleship in the open Atlantic. In November 1944, RAF Lancaster bombers sank the Tirpitz using tallboy earthquake bombs, each weighing 5 tons. The ship capsizes, trapping over 1,000 sailors inside. The dock at Saint-Nazaire is not fully repaired until after the war ends. The post-war reckoning is swift and severe. In October 1945, General Anton Dostler stood before Allied judges in Rome, accused of ordering 15 American soldiers eliminated after they surrendered in Italy. The prosecution presents the Commando Order, stamped with Dostler's signature. His defense: "I was following orders." The judges deliberate for 2 hours. Dostler is sentenced to elimination. On December 1st, 1945, at 0700 hours, Dostler walks into the execution yard at Aversa. 12 U.S. Army riflemen stand ready. He refuses a blindfold. His last words are in German: "I pass for Germany." The rifles crack. Dostler falls forward, 12 rounds through his chest. He's the first of 12 high-ranking officers who face execution for enforcing Hitler's order. By 1947, every commander who eliminated commandos was either hanged or eliminated. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel and General Alfred Jodl are hanged in 1946. Admiral Erich Raeder is sentenced to life imprisonment. At Nuremberg, the Commando Order is found to be a direct violation of the laws of war. The Hunter class has won, even in loss. But the story doesn't end in 1945. These men created something that refuses to perish. The British units are the blueprint for US Army Rangers and Marine Raiders. Their influence extends to the modern Royal Marine Commandos, the Parachute Regiment, the Special Air Service, and the Special Boat Service. The Bergen rucksack continues defining load-bearing design worldwide. The Fairbairn Sykes dagger remains a distinctive hallmark, its profile featured on elite unit badges across the globe. On a December night in 2019, in the mountains of Afghanistan, an SBS operator finds himself in hand-to-hand combat with an ISIS fighter. His rifle is knocked away. He's alone in the darkness. He reaches for the Fairbairn Sykes knife on his belt, the same design carried at Saint-Nazaire 77 years earlier. The blade Arthur Young carried into France, the blade that eliminated sentries in Norway. The SBS operator has carried this particular knife, a World War II original passed down from his grandfather, for 16 years. He's never used it in combat, until tonight. The blade enters at the 45-degree angle, just as Fairbairn taught at Achnacarry. Carotid artery severed, unconsciousness in 5 seconds, loss in 12. The ISIS fighter drops without a sound. This event, believed to be the first combat casualty involving an FS knife in almost 50 years, underscores the enduring utility of the stiletto point. The myths that terrified the Nazi high command haven't perished. They've evolved. They're in the Afghan mountains, the jungles of Burma, the streets of Mosul. Anywhere tyranny rises, Churchill's Hunter class is there, waiting in the darkness with a knife and a mission. The techniques pioneered at Achnacarry, the audacity at Saint-Nazaire, the willingness to accept impossible odds at Vargso, these principles continue defining elite military units today. The 611 men who sailed into the Loire estuary that dark March night couldn't have known they were creating a blueprint for warfare that would endure for generations. But their sacrifice, their courage, and their willingness to walk into hell ensured that when evil rises again, there will always be someone ready to meet it. Not with speeches, not with negotiations, but with steel in hand and fire in their hearts. The Hunter class never fell at Saint-Nazaire. It multiplied, it evolved, and it's still hunting. Somewhere tonight, an operator is carrying a Fairbairn Sykes knife into a mission Churchill would recognize. The techniques born at Achnacarry are still being used in the mountains of Afghanistan, the streets of Mosul, and places we'll never hear about. If you want more stories connecting the warriors of the past to the fighters of today, subscribe and hit the bell. What should we cover next? Comment below. And if this story moved you, share it. History like this refuses to stay buried.